Coming up, a new home for a technology center for youth. And John Tahsuda weighs in on Congress and federal appropriations. Join us for those interviews plus headlines ahead on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The ICT Newscast is sponsored by the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, a nonprofit organization serving American Indian nations and people in the recovery and control of their rightful homelands. On the web at iltf.org.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahan. We begin in Anchorage, Alaska, where the winter weather has returned. 4 homeless people have died this past week, underlining Anchorage's ongoing struggle with fixing the unhoused problem at a time when there has been more than 2 feet of snow in 3 days. Alaska natives make up 48% of the homeless population, despite being only about 12% of the Anchorage population. The total number of people who have died while unhoused is now up to 49 in Anchorage. This is more than double the number of people who died in the streets last year. The heavy snow covered people's tents and vehicles, and people set up makeshift camps all over Anchorage when the city closed a shelter in the sports arena established during the pandemic. According to the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness, access to transportation, access to health care, and lack of knowledge about public services could have been a factor in the 4 people's deaths since there were shelter beds available. In the West, California forests are in jeopardy. Despite relatively mild wildfire seasons in the past 2 years, California has seen 12 of its 20th largest wildfires, and it lost nearly 7% of its tree cover since 1985. What was once a green landscape is now charred. A combination of factors are to blame. The elimination of indigenous burning, logging of large fire-resistant trees, and other practices that have allowed small trees, undergrowth, and deadwood to choke forests. Conifers, or typically evergreen trees that bear cones or needle-like leaves, have been dying at an alarming rate because of the drought. This makes them susceptible to disease and pests and more likely to go up in flames. A changing climate has also brought more intense and unpredictable fires. Wildlife habitats are in danger, along with the quality of Sierra snowmelt that provides about 60% of the water for farms and cities. The Forest Service plans to ramp up thinning in places where the wildfire threat to communities and infrastructures is most immediate. With the newly enacted Native American Voting Rights Act, there's a steep learning curve that election officials will face this season. The Native American Voting Rights Act lifted some of the barriers, such as providing more drop boxes. And another benefit is that the act allows voters to receive ballots at their official buildings if their rural street address is unavailable. But there are still problems, including a lack of consistency among the tribes and limited access for those without mobility to reach those buildings. There are few animals more widespread and meaningful to Native Americans than the buffalo. Let's take a closer look at how different indigenous people view them. Buffalo are one of the most frequently mentioned animals in indigenous history. According to experts, Native people and buffaloes co-evolved over some 10,000 years. As such, there is a wealth of stories about the buffalo and its services to Native people across Turtle Island. Indigenous people used all parts of the animal and often ritualized certain aspects of hunting bison, along with their tradition and origin stories. The American bison was on the verge of extinction through overhunting in the 19th century, but because settlers didn't know how to take care of them sustainably. The number of buffalo dropped from millions to about 500, but now it rests at about 15,000 wild bison, not to mention bison ranching. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. A Minneapolis organization devoted to Native youth has a new home. This after a devastating fire on May 29th in 2020 that destroyed its new building. ICT Shirley Snavy toured the new facility and interviewed President Kelly Drummer.
2 capital campaigns in 5 years and 2 buildings and managing the buildings and the production, and then it was really, really hard. So I have a few more gray hairs for sure from it and everything else. But you know, when I see the kids here every day and the amount of kids, it was all, you know, it was all worth it. So.
The violent protests that followed the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police caused the complete loss of the newly renovated Migazi headquarters. Serving youth since 1977, it is now opened in a new location.
One of the desires with that building was that it would have be able to have solar on the building. It would be energy efficient. None of those things happened on that building we lost. And so this time around, we had about 4 design sessions with youth, with board, with staff. And so that's the reason where we're sitting right now. We decided to build an addition because it wasn't quite big enough to hold all our programs. And so we did make a decision to build an addition, which was, you know, $3 million more in the price of the renovation and the project. But we do have solar. We have 3, there's a solar array above us right here. There's one above the offices over here, and then we have a solar trellis that faces Lake Street. And then our heating and cooling system is completely the most modern, high technology, energy efficiency of a renovation in Minneapolis right now. So far, I don't know the results, but they'll be monitoring the results on our energy efficiency. And we received tons of, I think almost $100,000 in rewards already for our solar, which is almost paid for half of it, the installation already. So there was a lot of things, gender neutral bathrooms in this space that we didn't have at the other space, actually a green space. We have a little bit of a yard here. So there's a lot of things with this building that we didn't have and we desired, but we have here. So it's been great. Actually, this is the more desirable location because we're less than 2 blocks from South High School and about 4 blocks from the Little Earth community right on Cedar here. So as far as location, we're in a much better place. And I do think, you know, what I've seen since we moved in here and school starting in September, we have kids that just drop by, you know, because they're walking on their way home or to the bus line. So we've already seen a huge increase in our participation just because of the location. I've been here 5 years, and so the first year was really managing the other building project and trying to understand the organization. And then COVID hit, and then we were just kind of grasping at straws to get kids engaged. But now we have so many kids that we have to turn kids away, so we're moving to an application process for both the Green Tech and the First Persons Productions program. We have room for 15, and it fills up fast. And so, but then also implementing the application. You have to apply for a job, interviewing. So they're learning some interviewing skills. They're very basic, like 4 questions. And that commitment, they're guaranteeing commitment to the program, because otherwise some other student would be able to participate. Because when we have 60 kids in this space, which we have, that's about the capacity, you know, for that we have at one time. So, and we've already been there since we've been in our new space. So that's actually a really, really exciting thing for us, because it's the first time we've ever had that, I think, as an organization, to have that many kids. Media is still a huge part of our work. First Persons Productions is still our most successful program that we have. And you know, in the 80s is really when they started focusing a little bit more on education and then the technology piece. So that's kind of been a core of our work, and then in the 90s it kind of kept building, 2000s, and so but we only worked in Minneapolis. So when I started here 5 years ago, we only worked in Minneapolis. Now we're working in St. Paul, the suburbs of West Tonka, Wayzata, Farmington, and White Bear Lake, and Fridley. So those are that's a big expansion in 5 years to move into those communities. But we are also a technology space. Like, we were the first ones to have computers, and students could come after school and utilize the computers. And so Our Teen Tech Center kind of complements all of that work with the new technology, but we actually have a recording studio now in this space. That's another thing we did not have in our other space because it was like, well, we only have this much amount of money and this is what we have, you know. And so really designing that recording studio, which is beautiful, that's also can incorporate, that's a new technology. Kids love it. They're like, can I be in the studio? Can I be in the studio? So, and it'll help with our podcasting, our radio and digital archiving, kids producing music, playing music, all of those things, kind of being a recording studio for the community. I think the biggest thing is just the amount of kids that want to engage right now. I think after COVID, kind of after what happened here in our community with the civil unrest, there's so many kids that want to engage, and it's just surprised me the amount of kids that have been coming to the new space. We had our Teen Tech Center open, and we thought, oh, there'll maybe be like, 10 kids. It's like 28 kids, and we need more staffing. So we've had to take some leaps and then have to retract. This youth organize. They hopefully will run the help run the programming. It's a youth-led organization, and it's their space. So a dedicated space just for them is, I think, just as important as anything else in the community. They're just like, they want to be together. They want to be doing things. And I think it's very interesting is we've run focus groups really about our new strategic plan and what we want to do in this building. And as we evolve and change, and one of the things is like they just want to drop in. They don't want to have to be in a cultural programming. They don't want to have to be learning Dakota or Lakota language. They don't want to be doing the cooking thing. They just want to hang out. And I'm like, we don't have those spaces for them. We don't. It's like, and a lot of it is funding driven. You have to be doing a culture program, a leadership program, academics, or some sort of programming. And just to have kids for a place to gather, nobody wants to fund that. But if that's what we're hearing from kids, we need to listen to them. And so I've been really struggling with the board a little bit around that. And then I've been really, when I've been meeting with funders, telling that story of what I'm hearing from kids.
Staff and volunteers salvaged some of the building materials, and artwork from the fire is used in the new building.
My name is Giselle Richards, and I'm a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and I support our Native men. A lot of us come from communities where violence is common, but violence, especially domestic violence, is not normal. If you or someone you love is experiencing violence, it is not your fault. If you feel unsafe, let a trusted friend know, or a loved one. If you're not sure who to talk to, there are always people ready to help. If you or someone you love needs help, there are resources ready. Call the Strong Hearts Native Helpline today at 1-844-7-NATIVE or 844-762-8483. It is a 24/7 Native helpline where you can safely speak with a Native relative. You can also visit strongheartshelpline.org to chat with a Native relative online. You are important, your life matters, and I believe in you. It takes help to heal. Reach out today.
Congress is once again debating a solution on how to fund the federal government. From Washington, ICT regular contributor John Tahsuda helps us break it down. Welcome, John. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, let me start with the question that's still on everyone's mind, and I think we could just take the script from last time, but what's going on with the Congress and a potential close down of the government?
Well, yeah, we're looking at that again. There has been a proposal from the new House Speaker to do something that, to my knowledge, has been done before. Usually when they do these extenders, budget extenders, they just extend everything that's not been enacted yet. But he's proposing sort of a staggered extensions for certain appropriations bills. And so it'll be interesting to see. I'm guessing that will pass out of the House, and then we'll see how the Senate handles it. And one of the things that always comes down to, since appropriations have to come out of the House, technically come out of the House first, and we're so close to the deadline, that really puts the Senate under the gun to accept, some of these proposals from the new Speaker's office. So, um,
Well, and that's even more complex when even after a committee report, it's still got to get 60 votes.
still has to get 60 votes, right? Right. And there are, though, I guess if you count heads, there's probably more folks on the Senate side, both Republican and Democrat, who uh, don't want to be obstructionists from funding the government, at least from keeping the government from shutting down. So I imagine there will be a short discussion over absolute showstoppers, and then they'll probably cave on a lot of things that they otherwise wouldn't, and hope to get those through as they continue to work through regular appropriations bills.
One of the things that we've seen in state legislatures, and you always think of states as the experimental ground, is moving to multi-year budgets. Do you think that's in the card for this process down the road?
Um, Not in the foreseeable future. So that would be it's been proposed several times. I think by both parties at different times. And but I think that right now the fight over the federal budget is just multi-sided. It used to be that the fight was really over like the size of the debt and how we needed to restrict spending for that. But now there's so many policy questions that are rolled into these that it's not just a money question anymore. It's not just a debt question. It's multi-sided. It's kind of like a Rubik's cube. You have to keep working it from all these different sides to try to find something that works.
Well, one part of that Rubik's Cube, and let me just ask you this, is the long-term debt issue. And that really comes down to Social Security and Medicare and a little bit Medicaid. Some have said we need a long-term commission to look at these. Others have talked about really some significant tweaks that could happen, such as raising the income limits.
Right.
Does something good in that sense come out of this?
You would think logically, but there have been several commissions in the not too distant past, that have come up with ideas, and it's just always such a hard thing for Congress to actually get into. The politics around Social Security in particular, are so fraught, and interestingly, and there's been a couple of recent articles, the fight over Medicaid and its role in Obamacare, et cetera, doesn't seem to have the flashpoint that it did just a couple of years ago. It seems like there's, as happens, sort of acceptance now. Obamacare has been in place for long enough that people sort of accept it now as sort of the status quo. And I don't hear a lot of Republicans saying we're going to tear it down now, So that means that the politics around Medicaid, because it's so wrapped up with Obamacare and low income access, that then becomes difficult along with Medicare and Social Security. So it becomes a real political challenge to do this. And if you look at the numbers, the US population is eventually going to decline, but particularly the sort of boomer generation that is really, such a huge chunk of Social Security right now, is eventually going to, subside. And so everybody's just trying to look for some fixes to get us over that hump, I think.
Well, and I am of that generation, and actually one of the ones delaying my Social Security for the future. So I kind of fit into both sides of that question. I want to shift from the controversy over the budget to the non-controversial topic of elections. This last week was a pretty extraordinary election and surprised a lot of people. Maybe hear your take on it.
Well, not just me. I think if you look at a lot of pundits, I think the takeaway is that this abortion issue seems to still be one of the few things that is a single rallying cry for a group of voters. Because it seems to resonate with sort of moderate Republicans, particularly women, that means that it draws not just all the Democrats that will support it, but draws in those sort of central idealistic Republicans. But it seems to be enduring as an issue for them still, and maybe because the Supreme Court case is still very recent in mind, and these fights have been happening, but it does seem to be the one thing that Democrats have been able to hold on to as a successful issue.
Is there a way for it to be reframed from the other side?
I think that they have to come to grips with the notion that there's got to be some reasonable way to handle it. I suspect, and you look at polling, the majority of Americans do not want just free for all right up until time of birth, abortion. But clearly, there's a line somewhere there that folks are uncomfortable with this. What even Republicans are saying is government interference with personal medical decisions, and where does that become then a choice between a baby's life? These are difficult questions. But there are proposals. Some of the Republican presidential candidates, I think they've all dropped out now at this point. But we're proposing ideas like a 15-week federal minimum, et cetera. And so I suspect that at some point, sort of central, at least more central line Republicans are going to coalesce around some idea like that. And even if it doesn't get actually enacted as a federal law, that might become sort of the go-to standard state by state as they continue to work through these.
Well, I always learn a lot. Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir. Always great to talk to you.
When we began this conversation, John and I joked that the script had not changed since the last interview. And just after our interview, the House voted to pass yet another continuing resolution. It was the latter approach that we talked about. So here we go again. Now the Senate will weigh in the House, and the same issues will be back on the table in January and February when this temporary spending bill expires. And the new speaker, like Kevin McCarthy, passed this bill with the support of Democrats, exposing even more divisions within the Republican Party. Stay tuned.
Tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish he was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond, Mr.
Hold
Sim?
it. Hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can't, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing. And God knows the American people have enough contempt for Congress. Let's not
I don't
make
like
it worse.
thugs and bullies.
You have,
And that's
you
what-
have
I don't like you, because you
Hold
just
it.
described yourself.
Hold it. You have the mic.
Yeah.
You have time.
All right.
Make your statement.
Then let's do this, because I did challenge you and I accepted your challenge, and you went quiet.
No, I didn't go quiet. I was.
hold on.
No,
You challenged me to a cage match,
No,
acting like a
sir.
12-year-old schoolyard
Hold it.
bully.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
Hold it. No, excuse me. I have the
I will
mic.
say exactly.
Senator
what you
Mullen,
said.
I have the mic. You have questions on any economic issues, anything that said, go for it. We're not here to talk about physical abuse.
You brought.
We're not
him
talking
in.
about, of course I
And,
did.
and let me show you his hearing, because I want to expose this thug to who he is. And
If you're not pointing at me, that's disrespectful.
All right.
I don't care about respecting you at all. I respect
don't
people that
respect you at all.
respect. So
All right, hold
let
it.
me
Hold it. No,
You're one of
hold
100
it.
of the most
Hold
elite
it,
people
please.
acted.
Please. All right? This is excuse me. This is a hearing to discuss economic issues. All right? If you have questions for Mr. O'Brien or anybody else on what he has said, go for it. But we're not here to talk about fights or anything else.
I'm quoting exactly what he said.
You can
and
say
this
what
is-
you want.
This is.
So what was that all about? Yesterday, speaking of Washington, we take you to something you don't see every day. A United States sitting senator, Mark Wayne Mullen, who's a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, challenging Teamster leader Sean O'Brien to a rumble. It was an extraordinary moment, and this wasn't the only physical drama on Capitol Hill. NBC News reported that Representative Tim Burchett, a Republican from Tennessee, accused former Speaker Kevin McCarthy of elbowing him in the hallway while he was talking to reporters. He said it was 100% on purpose. Bernie Sanders had the word about all this, and God knows the American people have enough contempt for Congress. Stay tuned. ICT invites you to be part of something special. Each week, we're taking on a different topic important to Indigenous people and you, our viewers and readers. Find the link at ictnews.org to sign up for the e-weekly newsletter. It's emailed on Thursdays. We're covering food, business, economic development, and arts and culture. And for December, we're working on a very special holiday edition on the web at ictnews.org. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.